Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third webinar in our webinar series. This one is regarding internal controls in a remote environment. We changed it up a little bit this morning where we're going to actually have kind of a panel discussion this morning, or more on an interview basis. But first I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Kristen Berdar. I am a partner with BST and I run our virtual accounting solutions division. I have over 25 years of experience working with clients and their CFO and their CFOs, or as a CFO consultant with them. We provide outsourced accounting solutions in VAS on a remote virtual platform. So we do not send somebody to an office to manually cut checks and to work on a system. We do everything that we do remotely, and we save those face-to-face meetings for consulting as well as other higher level services. But our main focus within VAS is to accomplish 3 core goals. We reduce the total costs and hassles around financial department systems. We eliminate the errors and delays associated with traditional manual processes. And we provide easy access to company KPIs through a dashboard, and to help companies better manage themselves every day, right? And so today I'm bringing on board with us Brendan Kennedy. Brendan is a partner within BST as well, but his focus is mainly in our audit and accounting solutions, or accounting division, where he provides audited statements for clients every day, evaluating their internal controls, helping them with their policies, and basically trying to minimize any risks that they might have. So Brendan, would you like to introduce or
Sure.
add
Thanks,
something?
Kristen. Hello, folks. My name is Brendan Kennedy, as Kristen said. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. I started at a large national firm and joined BST about 8 years ago, working with clients from as small as a small nonprofit and fire district, all the way up to large state authorities and international companies. So I've got a pretty diverse experience and have worked with everything in between. And looking forward to joining Kristen here as we talk about internal controls.
Thank you, Brendan. So we're going to dive right into it, right? And so what we're looking at today are internal controls, right? We've all been home for a number of months. We've all trying to work remotely. We sent everybody home with the exception of maybe going to the office to check the mail. And now that we're trying to reopen, and some people are still remote, some people are back in the office, we're having, some conversations with clients on what changes need to be made in order to kind of get back to where they were from a risk management standpoint. So, Brendan, we're going to talk, you start, I guess, with just what's the definition of internal controls, right? When you talk to your clients, Brendan, how do you talk about that?
Sure. Internal controls is a pretty diverse concept. And what most people think of is control activities, but in reality, there's 5 pieces when you think about internal controls. Those are sponsored by COSO, which include the control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and technology, and monitoring and processes. Internal controls start with your control environment, which is your tone at the top, your hiring practices, the things you do to strike an ethical value in your organization, all the way through to how you manage the back-end processes and keep an eye on everything. So it's a big, cumbersome process, and having the robust internal controls that you need can be expensive. So every single internal control needs to have a cost and benefit associated with it. And there's certainly no one-size-fits-all. Internal controls need to be tailored to the respective organization, the size, and the risk profile. Those are some key thoughts that I have.
Yeah, sounds like a handful, and it's quite cumbersome for clients to think about that. I think as we break it down into smaller pieces, right, companies are most concerned about cash these days, right? So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on what some good segregation of duties are, what some good, procedures are and policies are relating to cash.
Sure. Segregation of duties comes up all the time. We're always worried about misappropriation of asset. There's really two kinds of financial statement risk you think about. There's the kind that gets all the attention, which is the Enron style fraud, where someone's intentionally manipulating the financial statements to manipulate financial results. That's, of course, a concern. But simple controls surrounding cash, we're worried about somebody taking our money. And you mentioned before how we're in a remote environment now. We may have lost some of those safeguards where we were manually signing off on things, we were checking things. And now that we're in this remote environment, how are we doing those things? Simply from a segregation of duty standpoint, that can also be a challenge if you're a small organization. You may not have the money to hire a secondary person or a third person to completely segregate those duties. And to loop that back to the VAS and what Kristen's doing, by integrating your functions with an outsourced accounting, you have the option and the ability to segregate things. Certainly around cash disbursements, the person writing checks should be different than the person reconciling your bank statements. The person handling your billing needs to be separate from necessarily the deposits that are being made. There's some key things you want separate. And if you don't have that because of the size of your organization, you need to implement what I would refer to as some kind of higher level control, some kind of function that resides above that process, which can also be time consuming and expensive. If you're focused on running your business, you may not have time to do those things to make sure that all those cash transactions are being recorded properly and that there's no misappropriation of asset.
Well, it certainly is, very difficult for some of our smaller clients. And what we found in the outsourcing world is that one of the main reasons that clients will bring us in to help is so that they can work on their business and not in their business.
Right.
And a lot of what you're talking about is them working in their business and not and having those appropriate checks and balances and making sure that all the dollars they collect actually make it to the bank, right? And that there's no fraud being involved, in their organization, and that they have the proper duties. So, it's easy to say, why should companies care about internal controls, right? And the main answer to that is fraud, right? We want to mitigate fraud. Are there any other reasons as to why they should care about their internal controls?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a commercial entity, you want to be able to produce timely and accurate financial information. That's certainly going to drive your ability to get loans, your ability to seek investors. If you're a not-for-profit entity, you need to produce accurate financial results, oftentimes audited. If you're looking for donors or people to be a part of your organization, you might have requirements for grants. Not having accurate information, not having timely reconciliations, not having those internal controls is going to impact your organization. So there's the compliance aspect that you have to worry about. And also if you're making decisions without timely and accurate information, you're going to make key decisions using stale data, bad data, and that can impact your overall mission. So if your goal is to provide services through a nonprofit, having those internal controls and accurate information will help you. If your goal is to generate a profit, you need the most accurate and timely information you can have. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself at a competitive disadvantage.
It always makes me think back to some stories of prior accountants in my, pre-BST days of when we, found fraud within organizations back to my auditing years. And it always amazes me as to where it comes from within an organization, or how somebody can get away with that, and how important proper controls are. I would like to interject at the moment, and I know we're only a few minutes in, but we are here we will have ample time to answer questions. So if there's anybody that has any questions and you'd like to post them in the chat function, we will have time to answer those at the end, and to really kind of make this more of an interactive webinar for you as well. So feel free to post any questions you have in the chat box. And I know, like, in this strange time that we're going through right now with COVID, and is it going away? Is it not going away? Can we go back to work? I know that when everybody shut down, we had probably, one person going to the office to check the mail, to record all the deposits, to get the money in the bank, and all of the segregation of duties and all of the controls that were in place, whether they were, they fall within the 3 types of controls, right? Whenever we try to look at that for clients, we tell them segregate one person, like you just talked about, one person should open the mail, one person should make deposits. Do you see in now catching up on some of the audits that we have, do you see that companies have gotten away from the internal controls that they used to have, and how are they working to get back to where they should be?
That's a great question. A lot of organizations have fallen behind in their regular financial reporting responsibilities because of COVID, and that goes back to that timely and accurate financial information. Organizations have had to adapt to the changing environment. I mentioned before how you were accustomed to seeing manual sign-offs on documents, manual approvals. A lot of manual processes essentially had to get thrown out the window for more automated processes, electronic sign-offs, approving things within their computer system, distribution of materials on an electronic basis. So certainly for a period of time, I do think there was a control lapse. And from an audit risk perspective, I think that period would be a riskier area. As it relates to the back-end controls, though, the monitoring and whatnot, boards and organizations have been on top of what's been going on. So I haven't seen a huge decrease in internal controls, although certainly there's an opportunity as processes change. Anytime you change a process, it's possible that new people could be involved in performing the internal control. The control may not be designed as well as it was before, and it's an opportunity for things to break down. Luckily, we haven't seen too many issues so far, but we're also just getting caught up on a lot of these audits that fell behind because of COVID.
Great. And I guess the one point that I would expand on a little bit too, relating to reevaluating, I took a lot of calls in the beginning of all of this from clients as well as from, other prospective companies or, non-clients of the firm too, on, hey, we need to keep paying some bills, and how do we do that? Right. Sure. And so within our remote environment, we work with, third party, reputable third party vendors in order to attain the bill payments and to continue with that. They all have electronic signatures within them. So we use the, owner signatures and the owner approvals and the codings as our, way to move expenses through the system. And we've helped talk that through from a number of companies throughout the area, where we are. And actually, even I have clients out of state. So, yep. A reputable third party vendor that has an approval process is a great way to route invoices around for approval, to make sure that, expenses are still being properly authorized. On the deposit side, it's been a little bit harder, right? If you're just sending, if you're trying to minimize the number of people that are within your office. Is there anything that we can maybe help our attendees with today on what they can do from a short-term solution? Is it, should they send statements out to clients as kind of a confirmation of, hey, here's what we think you owe us. Here's, instead of just relying on the fact that all of the deposits are making it into the bank, and go more from a confirmation standpoint. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Sure.
Certainly it depends on the industry and what it is your revenue sources are. But having a good accounts payable, an accounts receivable system where you're matching your payments up with the balances is key. So having that, if you have a receivable clerk or whomever is performing that function, making sure that balances, money as they come in, are properly applied, is going to be a key control. Making sure that your customers reference the invoice or whatever it is they're paying. And then if there are unapplied balances out there, you're not sure what they pertain to, getting caught up with your customers is going to be critical so that you don't have missed payments. You certainly don't want to miss something that's due to you. It's pretty easy to vouch what came in. It's as simple as looking at your bank statement, but validating the completeness of that and making sure that you were paid everything you were supposed to be paid is the critical aspect of that. So having great billing records and matching up those payments is going to be critical, and doing that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. We have even actually, I had a call earlier this week with a company who was looking to create client portals, customer portals, I should say. We call clients, it's really customers for our clients, but customer portals so that the customers could log in from their end and continue to pay through or expand the ACH opportunities for payments by ACH. So where once, clients were really accepting mostly checks, we've now really converted the majority of those to ACH payments that come in each month, and they get, it's not any, even with the hold on the payments to come over from the bank, it's still faster than the mail these days, it seems like. So, and you don't have the then, to turn around and deposit it into the account and make sure it gets there. So, the ACH and being able to expand how you receive payments for clients, I think is good. And I know we want to leave there some time for questions at the end, but maybe towards, as we try to wrap this up, we can talk a little bit about, there are, 3 different areas in the accounting world of internal controls, right? There's the detective internal controls, there's the preventative internal controls, and then there's the corrective internal controls. So, we talk mostly about how do we prevent fraud. We talk a little bit more on the detective side, right? We want to put, and preventative side. And we want to put controls in place so that fraud never happens, right? And we're totally lost the word I was going to say, but, we want to put controls in place where we are making it difficult, right, for those people that work for you to even think about, some sort of fraud. But then there's the corrective internal controls as well, where if you do find something, and somebody has some sort of thought that something bad might be going on at a company, what types of controls do you have in place to be able to correct, if you find that something's not getting signed off appropriately, how would that be caught, and what are those corrective actions?
Yeah, that's tremendous. Certainly we want to stop it before it even happens. And that goes back to your control environment, which is, do we have good human resource policies and practices? Are we establishing the proper tone at the top and letting employees know that fraudulent behavior just simply won't be tolerated? But we can't prevent everything, and all of a sudden something happens. And if you're waiting for your auditor to catch that, I mean, there's been studies done across the U.S. It's a published stat that fraud is predominantly caught in-house. It's typically not caught as part of the year-end audit process, which is focused on your financial statements. So as a corrective measure, having something in place for your employees to report suspected or alleged fraud is critical. Do your employees know who to go to or what the process should be if they came across something? Do they know what they should report if they found something? So certainly large companies and large organizations have, they could have something like a fraud hotline or something where they could anonymously report an allegation. So thinking about having a reporting mechanism in-house, and again, I know that can be outsourced, or there could be a specific person, a board member even, that would take these allegations and investigate them. So without that, without people knowing that they have that opportunity to make these suggestions, it's possible fraud may not be detected. So having a good process in place around reporting of these kinds of things, I would say, is critical on the corrective side, because again, it's just simply probably not going to be caught as part of an audit process, and if there's no reporting mechanism, then no one may ever know about it.
Yeah, that's really great advice. You know, as we wind down here, what do you think the top 3 takeaways should be for somebody who's, you know, just starting a company or hasn't really put a lot of thought into, you know, internal controls because maybe they're smaller, you know, and they don't have enough people, or, you know, even for a larger firm, right? And now some people are remote, some people are not remote. What should, you know, maybe the top 3 takeaways be for how do you minimize the risk within your organization?
Well, let's start with a smaller organization. You know, if you're starting a new company or you're a smaller organization, those are the you're going to need to rely on either a higher level control, which would be someone performing some kind of monitoring function. It's going to be very difficult to have preventative and corrective controls. And that's kind of where having good partners, business partners like Kristen, what you're doing in VAS, when you guys showed me your bill.com, and I know there's other bill payment mechanisms, they're really, really good. I mean, you essentially have a positive pay function in place. The bank's only going to pay the checks that were submitted. It's simply, that's it. So you can eliminate manual checks and other things. There's the electronic approvals with those systems that allow you to approve invoices on a remote basis. You can review them on a web-based, any device that can connect to the internet as long as you're securely logged in. So having good partners, I think, when you're a smaller organization and you can't afford all those controls, one, it'll allow things to get done correctly, and 2, it will allow you to focus on whatever your mission is, again, whether that's generating profit or providing some kind of public service. For larger organizations with internal controls already established in place, certainly think about what's changed as a result of a remote environment. How much more important is information technology controls? We haven't really even broached that. That's a completely separate topic. If you're more reliant on information technology, there's probably a ton of general IT controls that you need to think about. Who has access to your computer system? Who can change things in your computer system? Who has user rights? Are there any conflicting user rights within your organization where people might have incompatible duties? So as things migrated from manual controls to these IT controls, I think those are going to be critical for organizations to look at, making sure their general IT controls are designed and operating effectively.
That sounds like really great advice. I did promise that everybody would have a chance to ask questions at the end, and we are approaching about 5 minutes left within the webinar and being respectful of everybody's time today. If you have any questions, you know, please put them in the chat box and we're happy to answer them. In the meantime, I'll wait a minute or two to see if there are any questions. But in the meantime, you know, I think that it's important for everybody to stay healthy and, you know, try to focus on moving your businesses forward, adhering to your policies that you had pre-COVID. And if pre-COVID, you know, they weren't so good then, and now is a chance to reevaluate them without, you know, perhaps hurting your employees' feelings by taking duties away for them or realigning things. You know, I think that this is an excellent opportunity. You know, I was working with somebody the other day because they have a long-term employee that has been with them for many, many, many years, and they did what, you know, they had their duties that they were working on, but, you know, sometimes as loyal and as good as having a long-term employee is, I think policies and procedures and controls tend to get a little bit more lax. Sure. Because, you know, Susie always did that. And so I think that this COVID really offers companies an opportunity to reevaluate what types of controls they had in place without necessarily, hurting somebody's feelings. It's, hey, we have a new way, we have an opportunity, and let's try to reevaluate and put proper controls to help mitigate whatever risk you have. We do have a question, Brendan. They're asking if we can recommend check writing services. And so actually I can take that. So we use,
I think that's on you.
yeah, that's on me. We use actually two different companies for bill pay services. We use a company called Bill.com, which is very well known. They've been around for many, many, many years. They have their proper SOC certifications. They have, all of the controls that they can have in place. And so Bill.com does integrate with the software that we use. So in a lot of these check writing or bill payment opportunities, you should try to find something that integrates with the accounting software you have. So for our clients, we code invoices, we get approvals, we do everything within Bill.com, and then those payments automatically sync over to our accounting software. The other software we use is called Use, which is actually YOOZ, and I think their website is GetUse. They use an ancillary company called Checkbook.io to actually make their payments. They're all kind of integrated together. And that's a little bit newer for us. We're trying to explore just having, they have a different billing structure. So you just have to kind of evaluate which one would be best for your company, but they're both very reputable. Use is a little newer in the system or in the industry, but still I hear, still have very good things to say about them. I have other companies and friends that do similar things for other companies, and they've been using them for quite a while. So we're trying to give them a try for wherever we have that best fit.
And Kristen, if I could add one thing there.
Yep.
Since this is an internal controls discussion, and you mentioned this, the proper SOC, that is an internal control reference. And don't ask me, it's an acronym. But these outsourced companies are required to produce these internal control reports. So Kristen mentioned that there's a SOC report that Bill.com produces. I assume Use or the other ones will as well. I know we have some payroll processes out there like ADP. They have a SOC report done which proves that their internal controls are designed and operating effectively. And if you're going to engage a third party like a Bill.com or a payroll processor like ADP, you certainly want to make sure they have those processes in place. It's a simple thing you can do. And then make sure that those reports are published by or audited by reputable firms. And that's part of your internal control structure as well.
Great advice. We do have another question. So Dave is asking a question on risk and compliance. So he says, clearly these are consistent concerns across all types and sizes of organizations. He's curious what we're seeing most often with clients during the unique time. Are we?
Yeah, that is a good question. It's a really tough one, and it's hard to say right now. The timing of all this, as we're completing our audits, this COVID impact has impacted nearly all organizations. Some have done really well. If you're in the right business, you probably, if you're in some kind of pool or certain recreational businesses have done very well. Others are going to be more financially stressed. If you're a not-for-profit, you might have less donations. If you're a governmental organization, you could certainly find your state aid and your sales tax being reduced. So anytime things are reduced revenue-wise, you're probably going to have to make a commensurate cut in your expenses, which may include some of the internal controls you've had in place. You might have to reduce people that have been doing things. You could have a brain drain. So from a risk perspective, clearly a risk perspective, which that's what concerns me, is new people doing new things. And it's not to say that those can't be beneficial or even better than it was before, but it certainly represents a risk. So that's kind of what I'm looking for when I approach my audits now. And I'm kind of right in the middle of it, Dave. So I don't have a good answer, but change is what I'm evaluating. Information technology changes, new controls, new processes, and making sure they're designed and operating properly.
Thank you, Brendan. And so I think we're all out of time. I don't have any other questions in the queue for right now. So if anybody can think of any questions, if anything comes up, if you're, pondering some of the information that we talked about later on in the day, you're all welcome to email your questions over to myself. My email address is kberdar@bstco.com. There is a option on the website too that you could go to the website and you can send us an email or a question that way as well. I think that's pretty much all for today. Brendan, I'd like to thank you for your time. And
thanks for having me. Nerdy accountants don't get to talk very much, so it was nice to be invited, even if the subject matter was a little dry. And what I tell my clients is, and I'm sure Kristen echoes this, is, even if you think of your question tomorrow, the next day, or the week after, folks like Chris and I are here to help. And any questions you have around internal controls, feel free to reach out to me as well. My contact information can be made available.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.